Dobro jutro, lepo pozdravljeni vsi udeleženci začetka serije spletnih seminarjev Strateško na Kitajsko. Seminarje organiziramo pred poslovno delegacijo, verjetno največjo do sedaj, ki bo potekala v sredini aprila. Ministrica za zunanje in evropske zadeve Tanja Fajon se bo mudila v Pekingu, v Šanghaju, podjetja pa bodo nadaljevala svojo pot tudi v Shenzhen. Kaj je namen te delegacije? Predstavitev slovenskega izvoznega gospodarstva kitajskim podjetjem, organizacija B2B-jev, obiski podjetij, predavanja zanimiva in pa tudi obiski državnih organov Kitajske. Namen je nasloviti zelo velik deficit, ki je izrazit in naraščajoč med Slovenijo in Kitajsko. To velja tudi za druge države v EU, je pa tudi nekako tveganje, vkolikor se podjetja ne pripravijo dovolj dobro na tako pot, da se tak deficit še poveča. Je pa Kitajska četrti največji trgovinski partner Slovenije, glede uvoza izdelkov celo drugi. Trendi pa so taki, da se ta deficit res povečuje iz leta v leto, ker je izvoz Kitajske v Slovenijo v veliki rasti, je plus 47% v zadnjem letu. Izvoz Slovenije na Kitajsko pa je malenkost padel za 15%, tako da v bistvu res moramo nasloviti to trgovinsko neravnovesje. Namen pa je, da še preden se ta pot na Kitajsko začne, da se podjetja, ki se bodo morda prvič udeležila tega trga, morda pa si ga želijo bolj spoznati, tudi razmišljajo o sodelovanju s kitajskimi podjetji. Nekako je namen organizirati serijo izobraževalnih seminarjev in sicer najprej nekako z nivoja podjetij, kako raziskati priložnosti, izzive na kitajskem trgu, to je današnji seminar, ki ga organiziramo s pomočjo EU SME centra, pa tudi s pomočjo Spirita in gospodarske zbornice. Drugi seminar bo 3. aprila, bo strategija za zaščito pravic intelektualne lastnine s Evropsko pisarno za intelektualne pravice na Kitajskem. Potem pa bomo šli v bistvu v tednu od 8. do 12. aprila nekoliko širše, bomo pogledali transformacijo globalnih vrednostnih verig z mednarodno banko AIIB, ki je prisotna v Pekingu, pa tudi splošno zelo močno v tem segmentu. Pa Svetovno banko bomo pregledali obete kitajskega gospodarstva 12. aprila. No, še nekaj besed namenim Kitajski. Kot ena največjih držav na svetu, glede števila prebivalstva, 1,4 milijarde jih je srednji razred, trenutno pol milijarde ljudi, v bližnji prihodnosti pa naj bi se ta številka dvignila na 800 milijonov ljudi. Gre za zelo velik, verjetno največji maloprodajni trg v prihodnje. Kitajska pa ima tudi zelo velike proizvodne kapacitete, skoraj 30% globalne proizvodnje je tukaj. V preteklosti je bil fokus na nepremičninskem sektorju, na investicijah, zdaj pa cena delovne sile ni več tako nizka v državah, ki jih predstavlja združenje ASEAN, se najde cenejšo delovno silo, je pa na Kitajskem infrastruktura zelo dobro razvita, delovna sila je izobražena in dobro se oblikujejo industrije proizvodnosti, kot je zeleni trojček, torej zelena energija, električni avtomobili in so v tem zelo uspešni in prodorni na svetovnem trgu. Ovire pa so na jezikovno-kulturnem področju, nerazumevanje, potem je tudi vladni vpliv velik, pa tudi huda konkurenca je. Današnji seminar nam pomaga organizirati in tudi vsebinsko gospod Alessio Petino, poslovni svetovalec EU SME centra v Pekingu, je delal na kitajskem trgu 7 let in bi v bistvu prosil, da tudi se lahko zavzame tale oder in pove nekaj besed tudi sam. Je pa EU SME center ena zanimiva točka, tako bi rekli angleško one-stop shop, ki dejansko brezplačno zagotavlja preverbo trga, nekaj ur svetovanja, sektorske izkušnje podjetjem, tako da jaz bi povabil tudi slovenska podjetja, ki si želijo na Kitajsko, naj se obrnejo na EU SME center, ki je pomagal že marsikateremu podjetju in tudi dobro sodeluje z veleposlaništvom. Alessio, I would kindly invite you to take the stage and start with the presentation.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you for the introduction. Good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here today and to co-organize this webinar together with Slovenian Embassy, Spirit Slovenia. We have done many activities in the past. We're very happy to keep doing such activities and working together to support Slovenian SMEs in understanding how China works and getting prepared to go to China, to approach the Chinese market. So a few words about myself. I am working at the USME Center project as a business advisor. Basically, I provide technical assistance to companies that have questions, have doubts, or that they want to know more about maybe some Chinese regulations, some market entry restrictions, some standards compliance requirements. So I coordinate all these areas. I also work on reports, market access, market entry guidelines for companies, and I do deliver training occasionally, like we're doing today. So if you have any questions, of course, also after this webinar, you are very welcome to get in touch, either me or other colleagues at the center. We are here for to support you. So now today I'm going to cover three main things, mention three main areas. The first one, I would like to start by providing general overview of what we see is going on, what's the current situation in China as well as in Europe. So to provide a context, the broad context under which you will have to operate. The second part will be the core part. It's a bit, it's very practical. It provides an overview of what are some market entry ways, requirements. I will be providing some examples in the meantime from companies that have engaged with us in the past, or other examples. And then the last part will be a bit more how you can work with us, how can you engage with us, and that's it. So this session, it's going to last for 1 hour, a bit more. There will also be a Q&A session at the end, but the way we will be doing this today is I hope that this session is going to be a bit interactive. So if you have questions at any time, you can raise your hand. We will also allow some questions pretty much halfway to the presentation. We are going to have some polls at some point during the presentation, so I hope you can click, you can participate in these polls, because based on this we can, you can comment on the results and of the polls, and then make some interesting considerations based on this. So that's it. The first part, the current situation, what we're seeing. So despite all the let's say the general context, what we read on medias and what's going on, we see that there is a very strong interest from European SMEs in the Chinese market. This was also the case during the pandemic, obviously. Problem is that it was very close to impossible to do anything at that time, because you couldn't travel, but the interest was still there, and it's still here now. And of course now there is a possibility to go to China, so this interest is even bigger. So a bit maybe some considerations about China after it reopened last year after the pandemic. We are seeing, where is China going? We are seeing a pretty intense regulatory activity in many sectors. In many sectors, there are a lot of regulations being issued, and this, of course, increase the requirements for operators to operate in these sectors, and this might lead to higher costs. So maybe in the past there were still many areas where there were some, let's say, uncertainties or legal gaps, gray areas. Now these are being addressed, and there is a lot of regulation going on. In practice, this means that you may need to do some more testing. You need to spend more to be compliant with the Chinese regulations and so on. China is also trying to become self-reliant in science and technology. It's trying to reduce dependencies on foreign products, and but one way to do so is actually to bring the production or the R&D of these foreign products into China and basically onshore the supply chains. This is pretty important if you offer any technology products or any products or solutions which fall within those sectors that China consider as strategic. We've also seen now there is the so-called charm offensive. Many local governments, authorities in China travel to Europe. They do investment attraction conferences, or they invite businesses to go to China. They are really keen to attract foreign companies to come to China. And I would say that there are two types of, let's say, foreign investment that is now being sought. The first one is the foreign investment, which is pretty big in size or high quality. High quality refers to products which are pretty advanced or technology products, rather than simple maybe consumer goods or retail products. So this kind of products are very welcome. If not this product, if you just had some, let's say, normal, let's say, non-strategic goods like consumer goods or food and beverage or cosmetics, things like that, I think I personally see more opportunities in lower tier cities, so cities beyond Beijing, Shanghai, and Shenzhen. This doesn't mean that these three cities don't offer opportunities. They do, but there are already a lot of competitors. The markets are maybe kind of saturated already there. So I would aim for lower tier cities. In practice, we also see that many companies sometimes have wrong expectations. They think that because the products are imported products or quality products, they will surely do well in the Chinese market. I think this is not the case anymore. You really need to provide value. You need really to provide innovative solutions to the Chinese market. Otherwise, probably you will struggle to sell your products, because there are many alternatives available, both made in China but also made in other countries you are competing with, like Korea, Japan, or Australia, or many others. So you really need to provide something valuable. China is also a very strong industrial policy. There is a lot of planning going on, and this you can also anticipate some of the demands by analyzing these documents, some development policies. You can try to understand what are the needs, so maybe you can try to jump in and try to offer the solution ahead of others. The sentiment, of course, as I mentioned at the beginning, the interest for Chinese market is there. Business is business, but actually China, there is some the economic situation in China is not as good as we were used to in the past years. The economy is a bit struggling to recover, and especially if you're a consumer, if you have consumer goods or retail, we hear from many companies that their sales are really suffering. So this is going there. Of course, then you have the real estate market, but this is maybe not a bit beyond the scope of today's webinar. It's for you just to know that the economy in China now is not as good as it used to be. So there are other factors now that that lead the purchasing decisions of Chinese consumers. So not just maybe branding, but now it's also price and other things. And finally, the outlook, we are seeing that some minor improvements are always taking place. Recently, in the past few weeks, China announced some visa exemption measures from some European countries. Not all European countries, probably all the remaining European countries will follow soon. But there are also other improvements. So maybe more opportunities for foreign investment in sectors which are traditionally closed. But in our opinion, these improvements take place at a very slow pace. And then they are often limited to certain areas only, to certain specific zones, free trade zones within China, so rather than being nationwide. So I think it's very important that we're not naive. We acknowledge the improvements, but we shouldn't expect sudden changes, game changer developments that will suddenly make the life of European businesses in China easier. And I would also like to say that, from this we're seeing that the Chinese context, China is changing dramatically. But I would also like to say that in the EU, we're also changing quite a lot. There have been quite a few interesting developments in the last few years, in the last 2 years at least. We have this economic security now. There are calls for outbound foreign investment screenings, or even stronger screening on on inbound investment. So in Europe, we're also changing a lot, and we will have to deal with an increasingly regulated and complex environment also in the EU. So this is the situation, and we have to be very aware of the situation. So this was a little bit short introduction. I would like to have a small poll now about what are the type of challenges that that some European SMEs may traditionally face once they land in China. And here there are different options. I would really be interested in knowing your thoughts about this. So what kind of challenges can foreign companies encounter once they are in China or once they visit China? All of the answers focus on different aspects, which is very interesting. There are so somebody chose local competition, some chose high costs of operations, some mentioned lack of knowledge, different role of government and business, and the two most answers, but it's still with a it's still there's not a big gap. It's unwritten barriers and cultural factors. I think these are very, very useful answers. Thank you for this. In fact, these are the options that you saw there are all types of challenges that you can face, and are all challenges that we hear from European companies once they get into the Chinese market, or they try to get or they approach the Chinese market. Actually, in most cases, you will face more than one of these challenges at the same time. So the first challenge that was lack of knowledge, preparation, commitment. Chinese market is not the same as, of course, European market, but also other markets. This means we will see later that you might not be able to sell your products automatically. You need to maybe apply some permits, and you need to revise your product maybe, and before you're allowed to enter the market. Also, the preparation and commitment. Sometimes people just take China as a side project. They invest a little bit, and then they hope to get some returns in a short term. I personally think that this is not the ideal approach. You really have to be committed into China. You have to have very specific resources for the Chinese market. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult. Working with the wrong partners. I'm very surprised that nobody selected this answer in the poll. Actually, this is a very common issue that we see. So, for instance, sometimes when European companies sell to Chinese markets, they work with Chinese distributors. They enter into an exclusive agreement with this distributor, but then maybe there are some issues with this distributor that it doesn't perform as expected, or there are even disputes. This happens a lot, and we will have one point later about working with Chinese partners, what issues you should pay attention to. But this is a very, very important and common challenge. Cultural factors. There were two answers to these questions. Cultural factors are very important when you negotiate with Chinese business people. there might be some cultural issues, and might be difficult to really understand each other. But also within the same organizations, from the organization perspective, there are cultural factors there. So maybe the practices that you have within your own company for approving a project or having meetings maybe might not be very suitable in China. Maybe Chinese employees might feel might not like them, and in the long term they might leave the company. So also within the organization, the organization culture is different. Different role of government in business. The local, especially at the local level, the government authorities in China are pretty much everywhere. They get involved quite actively in the business. This is quite different from Europe, of course, from most sectors in Europe at least. But I would like to say that this is not necessarily negative. Only sometimes the local authorities are very willing to support foreign companies within their area because they bring benefits, they employ people, they pay taxes, and they bring innovative products. Sometimes if you do so, they will be very happy to support you in terms of providing you some tax cuts, some tax exemptions, or some subsidies, or even introducing you to other potential partners. So you should be very, very aware of the role of the government. It can open many doors. It can close doors, but it can also open a few doors. High cost of logistics, operation, compliance. Actually, China now is very expensive. Renting an office, hiring people, especially in bigger cities, it's not cheap. And also, if you have a product that requires a certain certification in order to be allowed to enter the Chinese market, these certifications might be very expensive. Medical devices are very expensive to introduce to China, and you probably need to spend like a six-figure digits to get a medical device introduced there. So it's very expensive. Of course, other countries could be expensive too, but China certainly. Sometimes in Europe, we still have the conception that China, everything is cheap, but it's not anymore the case. Local competition, now in many sectors, Chinese companies are very, very strong, and there are some exceptions of few sectors, or maybe also for high-end products. Maybe foreign companies are still have a competitive edge, but for medium-end products, the local companies can offer very good products, and so consumers will probably choose these products because they're cheaper, they're closer, they're all Chinese, so they understand each other very well. So unless you bring something really unique, then you would probably not be able to compete with local companies. Unwritten barriers, this is very important problem. Sometimes, very often actually, what you see on paper, what the Chinese regulations say, might not necessarily be how it works in practice. There might be in practice other requirements which you will not find anywhere, and this is very common and involves any sectors. Now we get into the second part. It's going to be a bit more practical, and I'll focus on four main aspects. Market entry. Also, the second one would be how to have a long-term perspective and act gradually. The third part would be about how to meet with Chinese importers, how to deal with them, and the last part would be about more transactions. When you buy from Chinese stakeholders or you sell to Chinese stakeholders, what you have to be careful about. As for the first point, market entry options, there are different options, there are different ways, and each has some benefits and some disadvantages. You have to be very clear about what are the pros and cons of each one. And as in many countries, of course, there are different market entry ways. In China, you have two main ways. You have general trade, which is a normal trade. Then you have actually, you also have processing trade, which is basically where you export raw materials, components to China for assembling and for transformation, and then these products are re-exported to Europe. This is also processing trade. But then you have cross-border e-commerce, which is something very unique to China. Basically, we will see in the next slide in more detail. But basically, it allows you to sell in a much faster way, but you have some restrictions. You have to do it entirely online on certain platforms only. You can also work with distributors, importers that sell your products to China, but you can also do your own sales if you have an entity in China. You can just export, or you can produce locally, or you can outsource the production of your product to a Chinese partner. There are different ways. Sometimes you can do also two different ways at the same time. What I think it's very important to mention is that sometimes you will not have much choice. Sometimes you will also have sometimes you will be obliged to follow one specific way rather than the others. And we will see examples in the next slide. And I would also like to say that as we mentioned before, China has different market entry regulations. They have different standards sometimes. So you might need to revise a little bit your product before being able to sell it there. There are many products which require a pre-market approval. Before you are allowed to sell it, you have to apply for approval to a relevant authority in China. The process could be very tricky sometimes. Of course, it depends on the product, but it could be very lengthy. It could be just a few months, or could be even more than 1 year or 2 years for medical devices or certain types of cosmetics. And this process can also be very costly, by the way. Technical standards in China might not always be, they are in general aligned with international standards, but not always, especially in ICT, ICT realm. When there are ICT involved, standards might differ. And also European standards are not automatically recognized in China unless there is a Chinese standard which it's aligned with that, it's based on that. But for instance, if you have the CE mark for your product in Europe, this is not going to be useful at all in China. Maybe you can use it for marketing purposes, but not for entering the market. There are many things in China which are mandatory. Sometimes there are others which are recommended, but in practice, it's a nice way to say that something is mandatory. I'm not going too much into detail on this regard, but you just have to know that sometimes what is recommended could be in practice de facto mandatory. So you have to be aware of all these recommended requirements as well. And then very important, HS codes in China, as in other countries, are not the same as those we use for other countries. Only the first 6 digits are the same. The remaining digits can be different and are usually different. And another thing is that another mistake that we see is that companies expect to become profitable in a very short amount of time, maybe 1 year, 2 years. It's hardly the case. And so this means that you have to have enough resources, financial resources, to sustain your operations. Also, because once you are there, bringing money in and out of China is not very straightforward as it is in Europe, for instance. Sometimes you have to approve, you go to the bank and they have to approve certain investment, they have to exchange the currency. This might take a long time. So you have to have enough resources for this. So we mentioned a few examples. I would like to ask to the audience, how many of you know cross-border e-commerce and the difference between with general trade? Please raise your hand if you know. So cross-border e-commerce, I mentioned, there are 2 main ways. You see here a summary. There is general trade to the left, and you have cross-border e-commerce to the right. There are a few differences. The first one is, we mentioned, for general trade, many products require a pre-market approval. If you have a cosmetic, if you have a food product, you will need to register it in advance, and the procedure might take quite some time. It could be months and years. You see here there is the red explosion here to show that before you're allowed to put your product in the market, you will need to register it before. Cross-border e-commerce doesn't need to do so. So if you have a cosmetic which for general trade requires registration, for cross-border e-commerce you don't have to register it. You can sell it immediately. The condition is that you have a store, you open an e-commerce store on a certain cross-border e-commerce platform. But once you have that, you can basically just ship it to China, because cross-border e-commerce considers your products as personal goods. So you don't have to obtain all this certification. You don't need to go through compliance. So this is a very big advantage, especially for those kind of products which require this pre-market approval, like cosmetics, health food, and some types of food. So this is an advantage. The second one, you see here, is with the customs. With general trade, once your product arrives to China, it's immediately cleared by the customs in China. While with cross-border e-commerce is not the case. Your product usually arrives to China, remains in a bonded zone, it stays there, and once a Chinese consumer buys your product through the e-commerce platform, once the order is received, the product that they ordered leaves the bonded zone and is cleared by the customs. So it's one step later, and this has certain advantages actually. And the last one, main difference, which is the disadvantage of cross-border e-commerce compared to general trade, is that with general trade you can sell your product basically everywhere. You can sell it through offline channels as well. While cross-border e-commerce you can't. You can only sell it through certain platforms. So this is a bit an overview of cross-border e-commerce. I understand next month there will be another event specifically on this topic. So we also have a report on this area with case studies. So if you want to know more about this, you can stay tuned and or ask us. So we will be happy to provide more details. This is the report I was mentioning, and which is on our website, and it's free of charge. You can download it very easily. I would like to also to examine a bit more detail a few product categories which are very representative of European exports. Food and beverage, for certain food categories which are considered high risk, like meat, dairy, fruits, and health food, there needs to be a government protocol between China and your country that allows you to export certain categories of products. For Slovenia, for instance, if you have meat product, you cannot just sell all types of meat to China. You need to have a protocol with China and Slovenia that allows you to sustain that type of meat. And there used to be one with poultry, but unfortunately the imports of poultry have been banned, like from many other countries, because of these potential safety issues, diseases. What I would like to say is that this is the situation with general trade, but with cross-border e-commerce, you might be able to sell these products even without a government protocol in place. So seafood, if you have oysters, for instance, you might not be able to sell it to general trade, but you may be able to sell it to cross-border e-commerce. So sometimes cross-border e-commerce provides a way to enter the Chinese market, which otherwise wouldn't be available. For cosmetics, for general trade, you will need to register your product in advance, and depending on the type of cosmetics, the procedure could be take 6 months or can actually exceed 12 months. There are also different types of testing involved, but sometimes you will be obliged to do animal testing in China. But if you sell through cross-border e-commerce, all the above will not be required. So it provides certain advantages in this regard. But you can only sell it online. And medical devices, this is also, you will, depending on the class of medical device, you will need to register the product, of course, but the procedure can take 1 year, can even exceed 2 years. The point with medical devices is that your most important sales channel would probably be the government procurement channel, and there are trends. What I mentioned in the first slide is that if you want to continue accessing the government procurement channel, you are kind of induced to move your production to China, because this is becoming a requirement that domestically made products will only be able to access the government procurement channels. So what I'm trying to say here is that there are different market entry ways. Sometimes you don't really have a choice. They have different pros and cons, and you really have to study carefully these pros and cons for each way. You can also try to do both different ways simultaneously at the same time. Yeah, so this ends my first. There's also actually another underestimated, I think, entryway. Is that with a joint R&D project. If you have a technology product, you know, in Europe we have Horizon Europe, which is the framework program for research and innovation. If you join one of these projects, actually you can invite Chinese partners to join your consortium, actually. And there are also, at the bilateral level between Slovenia and China, there are also joint calls for joint projects between Ministry of Education and then the Ministry of Science and Technology in China. These are actually very interesting ways, are relatively easy in terms of requirements, and could actually, if successful, can also evolve into something bigger later. So take a look at that. The second point, I would like, if you have any questions in the meantime, please raise your hand and write in the chat so that, of course, we can discuss. Otherwise, I will just go ahead. The second point that I would like to mention here is to be to have a long-term perspective. Trying to see it. Yes, is to have a long-term perspective. I think I have this kind of way to say that when you go to China, you should multiply by 3 the time and money required to enter the China. So the kind of money and time you would require to sell, I don't know, to other European countries or to other countries, take these and multiply by 3, then you have what you will need for China. Is, of course, it's a simplification, but fundamentally it's true. You require longer time and more resources. When you enter China, you are basically a startup, unless you are a very big brand which everybody knows. You will be a startup. You will have to build your partner space, your client space, your infrastructure, your supply chains, all from scratch. So this takes effort and resources. Our suggestion is always to focus on one city only first, or maybe one region only, and then scale up later, and then grow from that later. But not, we see often mistake. Well, it's not a mistake, but it's something that is not very cost effective, that European companies try to go all in and go to Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, Chengdu, different cities at the same time. It's good that you explore different cities, but at least once you have a short list of one city or 2 cities, then just focus on that one. Mistakes, of course, it's very common to have mistakes, to do mistakes. The most important thing is that the mistakes are not that severe, because this could actually be this could kill your brand. And there are examples of especially food and beverage companies or fashion companies that try to trick Chinese consumers. They provide products with different recipes in the Chinese market compared to foreign markets, or they try to mock some Chinese elements, and Chinese consumers will find out and will start to boycott your product, will start to write on social media about how bad you are. So basically you will kind of be you will not have many options anymore in the Chinese market. So be aware of this. You should not try to trick Chinese consumers, because they are smart and they will find it out. Another thing that I like to say is that you shouldn't think that you are special. We see sometimes the European companies come to Chinese market thinking that I'm European, I'm quality, people, will for sure will buy my products. I would say that this is still the case. In many sectors, you have local competition, which is still pretty good. But you really need to, but these elements alone are not enough. You also need to do a lot of marketing. You need to do a lot of branding, and sometimes you have to educate your consumers about your product. So so having a good product alone may not be enough. I would like to launch another short poll about this. So this is just, out of curiosity. We see companies might allocate different budgets to marketing in China, and of course, depending on the sector, the percentage of marketing to your overall budget changes significantly. And I would like to know what is yours. Okay, we're getting some answers. We got 5 answers so far. 3 answers say 1 to 5% of the budget is allocated to marketing. We also have 2 answers for 5 to 10%, 1 answer for more than 20%, and 1 answer for around 1% of the budget. So this already gives an idea of how different approaches European companies have when they target China. Of course, this has to do a lot with the sector and the product that you have. If you have a consumer goods, maybe you might need to spend more. Rather, if you are a technology product, maybe you will need to spend less. But marketing is regardless of the product and the sector, marketing in China is extremely important, because the brand, you will not have a strong brand when you go to China, but if you have a strong brand, you will have more people actually coming to you rather than you going to seek for people. So marketing is extremely important, and you should of course consider that, allocate enough resources to that. Yes, I just mentioned marketing. Another thing I usually recommend is for SMEs to have some government affairs resources in China. We mentioned in the previous slide at the beginning that the government in China could be kind of everywhere. They can open doors for you, so you should have somebody that try to engage with these people and try to follow, to do some to have some discussion and try to benefit from this. Usually SMEs don't have government affairs resources in China. I think you should have at least some part-time resources, somebody that follows it. It's extremely important in our opinion. So yeah, to summarize, having a good product and innovative solution alone might not be sufficient. You need to have many other things like marketing, branding, government affairs, public relations. You have to have a lot of other things, especially in China. So I have an example here of a company that comes from Northern Europe. They do soil remediation. They provide a very innovative solution for cleaning the soil, basically. So the approach used by this company was very long. It's the example here covers 5 years of time. So at the beginning, they knew that the solution would be welcome in China, but they didn't know how and where. So they first went to analyze the national 5-year plan and other policy documents in this sector to see specifically what the problem is and how, and to confirm that the product is really needed. Once they know the overall situation at the national level, they went to analyze the same documents, but at the local level. So they went to see for each province, or maybe for many provinces, if the same issue was present there, if it's also encouraged there at the local level. And once they did so, they came up with a short list of 3 provinces where the issue was most prominent. So basically where their solution will have more potential. So they have these 3 provinces, and they hired a senior resource. Of course, is a local resource. They hired somebody very, very senior, so of course it costs a lot. But basically through this resource, they went to engage with these 3 provinces. They went to participate to local events, to conferences, and they do some outreach. They spontaneously went to approach the local authorities in these provinces to basically introduce themselves, to see if they were interested in cooperating. Turns out that one of these provinces was interested. They decided to launch a demonstration project in the city. Demonstration is very important in China. Is a very common entryway. If you have a technology product, you first demonstrate it in China, to demonstrate that in China works, and then you can do something later. So they did this demonstration project where the company actually only provided technicians and of course the solution, while the local government provide everything else. So the European company didn't spend a single, they didn't spend much. So this demonstration project worked, was very successful, and after its completion, the local government introduced other companies to basically to replicate the same project on a bigger scale in different cities. So this is to show how an approach, how gradual, how long-term your approach should be, working on different levels, on different gains at the same time. There's also another company we have. It's a very good company. We have cooperated before. It's called Civeco. We have a dedicated case study on our website on this company. They chose a very localized way to enter the market. They establish a company. They do R&D in China. It's a small company. The reason why China is because the founder, who was a French entrepreneur, was really into China. But it's very interesting that the approach used by this company, this is a software company. They provide operations and maintenance, smart operation and maintenance solutions. But it's very interesting that they use these solutions as a gateway for consulting. The biggest business chunk is consulting. So they use the software in order to provide the consulting, which is more which profits more from that. Yeah, they had many issues. They invested a lot in the marketing and in branding. They prefer to work with local firms in China rather than multinational companies because they pay faster. They're more flexible, and this is very interesting. I mentioned they have local R&D. They're very localized. They have a lot of local resources, and but one of the main challenges that this company faced was financing at the beginning. The resources were not enough. Recruitment and turnover is very high. And maybe now the situation this year, in these 2 years, the situation has been somewhat changed because the unemployment rate in China is very high now. So maybe now people tend to stay more on their jobs. But in any case, turnover, high turnover still remains, is still a common issue in China. And they prefer to hire people not from prestigious universities and train them locally rather than paying somebody from a prestigious, rather than hiring somebody from a prestigious university in China, paying this person twice the salary. And yeah, there are more details on this case study which can be found on our website.
I got already 2 questions from companies coming to my email asking if the company can contact you directly to test their business idea, Alessio. Is this possible, or whom to contact on SME Center?
Yes. So I didn't mention at the beginning, we as USME Center are funded by the EU. We are here for you, but we are mostly a first level kind of project. We provide insights, we give you recommendations. We are happy to discuss with you about your business idea, about your product, try to see what the requirements are to sell your product in China. But then that's we finish there. So we don't take the company further. We don't get involved into paperwork. That's something that the company will need to do it's alone or with other consulting firms. We just provide guidance on the process. We share our opinions or feedback or tips, but that's it. So in any case, the company, yeah, companies are very welcome to get in touch with us, but we don't we are not like a landing platform that we cover all your market entry in China. Foreign currency control policy. Okay, this is a bit technical and involves what I was referring with challenges, having enough financial resources, being challenging to move money in and out of China. So Chinese currency is the renminbi. It's not a fully convertible currency like the euro or the dollar or the US dollar. This means that to buy Chinese currency, you will need to go through the authorities and the banks. So when you move you make an investment from your company in Slovenia to China, you will do it in Europe, but then you will need to convert this money into renminbi, and then you have to go to the bank. You need to seek approval. Or if you're in China and you want to buy something from Slovenia, from any other countries, you will need to buy it in euro. But if you're in China, you have renminbi, so you will need to go to the bank and ask for approval to convert your renminbi to the foreign currency. And in the process, they will ask for a contract, for many paperwork. Also, if you do intra-company loans, if your parent company gives you a loan to your subsidiary, you will need to have it approved. It goes into no capital account rather than current account. It's there. You will need to have a lot of approvals from the bank, and to get approval, you will need a lot of paperwork. Then yes, this is a very simple answer, but of course in practice it's much more complex and technical than that. But I think for now it's enough to say that there will be a lot of paperwork and approval required. Is there potential for IT company or AI industry? Well, the short answer is yes. Of course, you have to see specifically what IT company, what product, what solutions you're referring to. But in general, these sectors are encouraged for foreign investment. You might even be able to get some subsidies, some benefits if you invest in these sectors into China. The problem is that these sectors are also pretty tricky because they're somewhat sensitive. There are a lot of requirements in terms of cybersecurity, cross-border data flows, which require you to understand very well the Chinese regulations, to have a lot of to have a compliance officer, to have a data protection officer. So yes, but it's not that easy. The third point here is about partners. How to meet a Chinese partner. We get these questions very often. Of course, it's not easy. There are different ways. If you are not on the ground in China yet, you don't have many ways. I think the most common way is to participate to a trade fair. You can meet Chinese companies in trade fairs in Europe as well, but of course the most direct way would be to go to China for a trade fair. The problem with trade fairs is that there are many trade fairs in China. There are big trade fairs, small trade fairs in different cities. You really have to select carefully which trade fair you're participating in. You really have to understand what are the visitors of this trade fair, what's the history, what's the role of the support, the organizer in this fair. You need to understand if there are other companies from your country, from other European countries. You have to do a lot of research first, rather than just going to that fair because you hear it's big. Sometimes bigger fairs are not as useful as small fairs. So it costs a lot to go to a fair, so you have to make a right choice, and you have to prepare very, very properly for that. Another way that we heard, it's not as common, but it could work, is that if you already work with an international company, and this international company has a subsidiary in China, then maybe you can try to get in touch with the Chinese subsidiary of this company through your through the contacts you're dealing with in other countries within the same company. Sometimes it could work. Another way, there are some B2B online platforms where you don't just buy from China, but you can also sell. You can also consider this. Maybe, I mean, it's not a hard process, and of course, you should also, of course, first and foremost, I would say you should get in contact with the embassy and the business organizations like Spirit Slovenia, with the embassy of Slovenia and Beijing. You should get in touch with them and see if they have some resources, if they have somebody they could help. Maybe Ian and Sonia, you can mention something on this later with the type of support that you can provide to companies. Maybe you can mention it later. For instance, to give a few examples of trade fairs, there was this company from Poland, in this case, that spent a lot of money to participate in a dairy trade fair for dairy products. They do milk. So to sell milk to China, you should register your product on a certain platform before, and the process can be very long. As we mentioned earlier, it can take 6 months. So this company participating to this trade fair without having completed this registration on that platform. The result is that the company was there, and all the Chinese importers visiting the fair were not interested in talking to them, because they say, okay, first you complete the registration on this platform and then we talk again. For now, there is no point of talking. So you should understand the market entry requirements before you actually go to a trade fair, because it might be, like in the second case, that you might not be allowed to sell your product into China. In this case was honey from a Dutch company. Netherlands doesn't have an agreement with China that allows Dutch companies to sell Dutch-made honey to China. This company didn't know, so they spent a lot of money to go to the fair, only to find out that they were not able to sell the products to China. Of course, they could sell it through cross-border e-commerce, as we mentioned before, but yeah, that was not the main expectation. There was also this another example of this pet food company, an Italian pet food company. They spent a lot of money again to participate to a trade fair, and they find out that one ingredient in their product is not allowed to be imported from Italy at the time. It was a meat product, and there was no agreement between Italy and China for exporting that product from Italy, so they had to change the product formula, basically. There are many examples like this. We have recently published a new report on trade fairs where all these issues are explained. We have good practices, what you can do before, during, and after the fair, in terms of marketing, also in terms of Chinese business etiquette. There are a lot of information there. You can find this report on our website. Yeah, also the business culture, negotiating with Chinese partners might be a bit different. You usually start from general principles, and then you narrow it down. You narrow the details down only later. Chinese people like to be very indirect, while maybe it's not always the case in Europe. So don't be that too straightforward. Also, again, like in many countries, but especially in China, you need to trust plays a fundamental role. The personal relation, the trust between two people is maybe more important than anything else. But it takes long to build this, and you should expect to have dinner and personal. You really have to cultivate personal relations. And also, if you are familiar with Chinese business etiquette, is better. Of course, as a foreigner, you are not expected to do everything totally all right. There is some tolerance, but if you know the Chinese business etiquettes, you will certainly surprise your interlocutor, and you will certainly make a good impression on them. And last, you should expect that your counterparts will know a lot about you. Last point that I have for today is about the about the transactions. When you sell to Chinese partners or when you buy from Chinese partners, there are some mistakes that you should avoid. There are things that you that you should take into account. So I have the last poll for today, and then we finish it. It's about what do you think are common mistakes that can happen, and that you should certainly avoid when you buy from Chinese suppliers or when you sell to Chinese clients? Yeah, we see that the two answers are the most receive the highest number of responses. Not signing a contract. Actually, yes, and using other just a purchase order or similar. And the other answer that received a lot of responses was not using safe payment methods. Of course, other issues such as IPR clauses, not including quality inspection clauses, that also received some answers. Thank you for answering this. Actually, these are we as SME Center hear very frequently about disputes between European companies and Chinese companies. These very frequent, and in our opinion, in many cases could be avoided. Typically, when you buy from Chinese suppliers, the typical issues that we hear are goods that are never received or are maybe lower quality than what agreed. They have lower technical specifications, or when you sell to Chinese clients, we hear cases that a certain company approaches you, they are interested in your product, and they ask you to pay notary fees to have the contract notarized, and they ask you to pay in advance these notary fees. And this is usually a scam. They're interested in scamming you and to get your notary fees. Notarization is not generally required. They might say that the bank needs it to apply for foreign exchange for foreign currency, as we were mentioning before, but it's usually not required. And or maybe you have an exclusivity agreement with a partner, but it underperforms, and you don't have provisions that regulates this aspect. You don't have punishment, you don't have fines or things like that, or late payments, especially for multiple transactions. When you have a framework agreement, and then the Chinese client suddenly doesn't pay or pays. These are frequent issues, and it's very important that you do due diligence on your partner, of course, at the beginning, but also on due course, when for already existing parties, and this is especially some elements that you should definitely check is the business scope, if there are previous disputes in which this company was involved, and so on. Very important, you should have a solid contract in place and should cover all these the options that we saw in the poll. You should have, first of all, you should avoid advance payments, especially when you buy from China. Especially if you sell to China, of course, advance payment is good for you. But if you buy from China, you should avoid advance paying in advance. Or if you cannot avoid it because you don't have much leverage, maybe try to limit it to a small percentage only and then pay the rest upon receiving the goods. More ideally, you should use letters of credit, because this offer a guarantee for you that the transaction goes well. You should include quality inspection clauses. So when you receive the goods, you have a certain amount of days to inspect the goods and check that everything is all right. And only if the inspection goes well, you will pay for the product or for the remaining part of the product. You should include dispute resolution mechanisms, litigation, of course, but also arbitration. You should consider it. Usually people, you should consider having using Chinese law in your contract, simply because it's easier to enforce the product. Of course, if you don't necessarily have to, but knowing that you should know that if you have a dispute, if you use Chinese law, which is pretty comprehensive in this regard in company disputes, then it will be much easier for you to enforce this decision. Chinese courts will enforce your decision. And then regarding IPR, actually, there is another project similar to SME Center that focuses exclusively on IP issues. I believe you are organizing, there will be a webinar in the next few days on IP, and the Slovenian embassy will mention something more about this later. So to summarize, you should have very solid safeguards in place. If you have a very detailed contract, it doesn't mean that you're not trusting your partner. It means that you are basically safeguarding your interest and protecting your interest in case something will happen in the future. We see companies that engage in transactions with Chinese companies without signing contracts, just with a purchase order, and this is very wrong. You should always avoid this. I would like also to say that as SME Center, we offer the opportunity to do an informal, simple background checks on Chinese companies if you're on any potential partner. So if you are interested in knowing a bit more about this company, you can ask us. We will do it again for free. Of course, we are not lawyers. We only base everything on desk research, but we will be happy to do so if you're interested. Last slide that I have is to show you this. These are examples of some company stamps, and that you can see in contracts. what do you think about this stance? I want to have another poll, but maybe doesn't work. But in any case, if you see any of these stamps when you're dealing with a Chinese mainland China company, and you see any of these stamps, these stamps are wrong. These have zero value in China. These have absolutely zero value. These are like trash. It's like walk away. These stamps have zero value for mainland China company. The stamps usually look like this. They are all standardized. They're all the same for all companies. Sometimes there might be minor differences, but in general, they always look like this. They are red. They are circle shape. Usually they have a big red star in the middle. Not always, but usually they do. And yeah, they have make sure that they look like this. Yeah, this was it. Again, we have another report on how to draft sales contract. It is mostly for when you sell to China. It also applies to when you buy from China, but I really invite you to check this. We provide examples of clauses that you can include. We highlight what are the issues that should definitely be included in the contract. So this was all for the previous part. I would just like to conclude by saying that China is changing very rapidly and significantly, but so is Europe, and the rest of the world, by the way. But still, China remains a very important market that should not be easily neglected. There are still many opportunities in China, but it's not easy to get them. It requires a lot of preparation, a lot of investment, a lot of commitment, resources. Actually, being in China is also very important because it could be a base for you to access other countries in the region. There are many European companies that don't sell in China, but they produce in China to sell to Southeast Asia. China has many free trade agreements with many countries in the region, and being there, it also has excellent infrastructure, and being there provides certain advantages. Also, China now is the place where many ideas and innovations originate. So being there allows you to really be ahead of your European competitors in understanding new trends, in understanding new innovations that you could integrate into your business activities. The most important thing is that you are very well informed. You know what are the opportunities, but you know what are the challenges, what are the risks, what are the long-term implications of certain choices, and this is extremely important. You should, yeah, we were mentioning before AI, IT. There are opportunities, but maybe once you go to China, maybe in 10 years, in 15 years, it will be very difficult for you to leave China. So there are some implications. Of course, we can discuss in the next days if you're more interested in knowing more. But yeah, you should be aware that having a good product alone might not be sufficient. You should really bring something unique, something really valuable, and of course invest in marketing. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for you to sell. You should act gradually, start from a specific region or from a specific partner, and then expand from there once you prove that it works. And finally, you should have solid safeguards in place. Yeah, this is how we work. I want to again, as I mentioned, the USME Center is a project funded by the the European Union. We are here for you. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us. This is a short video that we have to show our website. We have this self-diagnosis tool. It's basically a quiz that you can take to test your knowledge. You will get some recommended reports, recommended resources that we have. This is yeah, to show how it is. And again, everything is totally free. You see here you have cross-border e-commerce. You see the recommendation on reports that we have, and so on. then yes, if you have questions, come to us. We have experts, both in-house and external experts, that can have a call with you to go through certain issues. Sometimes we have surveys, calls for speakers. You are very welcome to join. If you have a certain topic you're interested in, you can let us know, and we will try to organize something on that. And yeah, and last, we're always interested in knowing the specific cases of companies. So this was my presentation. This is my email. You'll be very welcome to get in touch with me. Also follow our social media, and I'll end it here for a few other questions. Privacy is important. How you gain trust of local companies? I don't think it's that different from companies in any other country. So you just, are transparent. You are committed to the success of the corporation. I think this is the same everywhere. But what is slightly different in China is that on top of this, there is also the personal relation involved. So first, you have to make sure that business-wise, company-wise, everything goes well. You are both committed into having a successful cooperation, but at the same time, you have a solid personal relation with your counterpart. You can also share personal things, personal, family issues, or go to lunch, have dinner with this person, and share some personal things. It's very important, the personal relation in China, and this how to cultivate this. Of course, it's with like any other person. But I think the most important thing is to be committed and be sincere and be respectful of the counterparts. What is your experience with bank guarantees and letters of credit when paying Chinese suppliers? This is a very important question. So we see that sometimes, especially if you meet a Chinese supplier on one of these online platforms, they always insist on having you paying 100% of the product in advance, maybe 50% when you put the order and 50% when before the product is shipped. When you try to negotiate different agreements, like not paying in advance, or maybe different percentages, or using other payment methods such as letters of credit, they usually try to resist this. They will find excuses, but in general, I would like to say that you should insist on these methods because they're very popular in China. Letters of credit are very popular, and there are also actually Chinese banks in Europe that offers you the possibility to open lines of credit for letters of credit. You go to ICBC Bank. I'm not sure whether in Slovenia there are branches of these banks. Maybe you can confirm this, but in any case, in many European countries, there are branches of Chinese banks which are open to all European actors, and you can just go to them and have a letter of credit with the Chinese bank or European bank as well. So the experience that this cost, usually the price, I think, is 3 or 4% in some cases. In most cases, sometimes could be different. Of course, it will be more expensive to use this, but it's very safe because the bank guarantees, the bank steps in, and if there is anything wrong, you will be safe from the bank. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if this answers your question, but the most important thing is that the Chinese supplier will probably resist this, but you should not desist. At the end of the day, you are buying, you are paying, so you should call the shots on how you intend to pay.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alessio, for this extensive presentation. Rad bi še dodal, da tudi Alessio in ekipa EU SME centra bo tudi imela dogodek posebej posvečen prodaji preko e-platform v Pekingu ob obisku zunanje ministrice. Obenem bomo, ko se je govorilo o sejmih, ambasada je pripravila eno dobro listo seznama sejmov s komentarji, z udeležbami, Tako da, če bi kje v bistvu bilo tudi več udeležencev, se lahko razmisli o skupinski udeležbi. Vsekakor bomo pa tudi prisotni na sejmu CEI v Šanghaju med 5. in 10. novembrom, ki je v bistvu največji na Kitajskem in bo slovenski skupni nastop. Glede IPR bo seminar 3. aprila, tako da v bistvu vas vabimo k spremljanju.
Mogoče še dopolnitev. Z moje strani Spirit Slovenija, omenila bi še, da Spirit Slovenija pripravlja javni razpis za sofinanciranje individualne udeležbe na sejmih v tujini, tako da svetujem podjetjem, kolikor bi se samostojno udeležila kakšnega od sejmov, da naj bojo pozorni še na ta ukrep, drugače pa bi se zahvalila vsem za prisotnost in povabila vse, da se ponovno srečamo 3. aprila, ponovno ob 9. uri zjutraj na naslednjem seminarju.
I would like to thank, of course, Jan from the Slovenian Embassy, Sonja from Spirit Slovenia, and for doing this together. We're always happy to support you. And yeah, again, if there are questions, you're very welcome to reach out to us. Thank you and if you happen to be in Beijing, please visit us. We have an office in Beijing, so you're very welcome to get to know us and have a quick chat with our team. And I wish you a great day and look forward to being in touch with you.